Hi, everyone. Welcome to First and North. I'm Luke Canellis. Joining me this week on First and North. Let's bring in the crew. The voice of the Lions in Detroit, Dan Miller from Fox in Milwaukee. Lily Zawin from Fox Minneapolis. Pierre Nugent. Hello, everyone. And let's start with news from Green Bay. Get right into it. Packers released two-time Pro Bowl cornerback Jaire Alexander. Played for the Packers for 7 seasons. Green Bay tried trading Alexander, even offered a restructured deal. Couldn't agree. The two sides couldn't. Lily, how big a loss is Alexander to the Packers?
I think it's a big loss. I think people saying it's not are kind of downplaying what Jaire Alexander meant to this team when he was on the field and when he was healthy. I mean, of course, he was a 2-time Pro Bowl quarterback for a reason. When he was on the field, he was good. But unfortunately, the last couple of years, after signing a massive deal with Green Bay back in 2022, he just hasn't been on the field because of various injuries. It was a shoulder, a groin, a knee, just kind of left and right, just injuries out of nowhere. And so the last couple seasons, only played 14 total regular season games. And when you're paying a guy that amount of money, the Packers really wanted to see him on the field. So the injuries there really cost him his chance to stay in Green Bay. But of course, the restructured deal reportedly was the fact that Jaire did not want to take less money. So understandable, but now he's going to try and fetch that or even better on the open market. But when the Packers do look at their cornerback room, you have Keyshawn Nixon, you have a free agent addition in Nate Hobbs and Carrington Valentine. And after that, there's a lot of inexperience. And so cornerback now kind of is an interesting concern because the Packers knew that Jaire might or might not be with the team. They only drafted a 7th-round corner in Micah Robinson. So will he kind of fill that hole or will they go out and get somebody? That's the big question now. But, you know, the team, they really like Jaire. They like what he brought to them as well, but couldn't stay healthy. And now I think a big issue, not a big issue, but something they have to address moving forward is cornerback.
All right, Dan, I've seen 10 teams named as possible destinations for Alexander. Detroit's on that list. Number one, do the Lions need him? And number two, they're not thinking of paying him anywhere near what he was getting in Green Bay, are they?
I'd be very surprised. Just doesn't seem to make sense for what they're doing. They picked up DJ Reed during the offseason. They've already got some young guys that they drafted. Meek Robertson left over from last year. I just don't see where he fits here for the kind of money that he'd be looking for. I think they feel very good about their secondary right now. I think there's some other things they might be looking at if somebody comes available in the interior offensive line, maybe an edge rusher. That is probably the number one topic in Detroit and has been all offseason. I'm sure Brad Holmes is sick to death of hearing about it. I just don't see where he fits here.
All right, Priya, let me bring you in. Vikings have been linked to Alexander as well. Now that he is set to be a free agent, what do you think? Do you see the Vikings pursuing him?
Well, I think it's certainly interesting because they have one member of the coaching staff here in Mike Pettin that is certainly familiar with Jaire Alexander's game. I believe Pettin's first year as the defensive coordinator in Green Bay was Jaire Alexander's first year as a corner in Green Bay. So they have some familiarity there with Mike Pettin's point of view. But I do think it would be an interesting move for Minnesota. When you look at the opposite corner outside of opposite Byron Murphy, you're looking at guys like Jeff Okudah, who they just signed, Isaiah Rodgers, who they just signed, and Mekhi Blackman is making his way back from an ACL tear in last year's training camp. So there's a little bit of an unproven commodity at the opposite corner spot of Byron Murphy. So I certainly would be intrigued by the opportunity to see Jaire Alexander in a Vikings jersey. However, I'll ask the same question that I've been asking my fiance for the past 6 months when it comes to our wedding. How much? How much is it going to cost? If it's 10 to 12 million, okay, fine. I'm okay with that. If it's north of 12 million, I mean, what's another couple million, I guess, at this point? But I think Jaire Alexander would be an interesting possibility for Minnesota. That's something I would keep my eye on for sure.
I'll tell you what, if you're thinking of dropping 12 million on your wedding, I hope that you're inviting Dan, Lily, and Lou to the wedding as well.
Yeah.
Open invite. I'm never going to retire. I'm never going to eat out ever again for the rest of my life at this point. Everyone's welcome.
I love it. Hey, Lily, let me bring you back because releasing Alexander frees up, if I'm not mistaken, about $17 million in cap space. Do you think the Packers now can make a run at Bengals pass rusher Trey Hendrickson? He didn't report to mandatory minicamp in Cincinnati.
I think so. I think if Trey Hendrickson is a guy who is available, I say why not? Why not go out and get a premier guy at his position to add to your pass rush, to add to your defense, to just add to the overall veteran leadership as well. I think he would be a great get for Green Bay if they were to, see him, on the market and they're able to snag him. I think he would be an intricate piece for this Packers defense and Jeff Hafley. I say why not? But the question is, will he be available for another team to pick up here? I think the Packers would kind of be salivating if he was indeed available and on the open market so they can snag him. But I think this is a guy that would bring value to any team, and I think the Bengals should lock him up, but that's just my opinion. But again, the Packers, they do need that production up front. I think he'd be a guy to add to it, and I think the Packers would be foolish not to if he would be an option.
Pierre, let me bring you back because the Vikings extended one of the better blocking tight ends in the NFL. Josh Oliver gets a new 3-year deal. Do you like that move?
I like it in terms of your backup option. It's a little rich for my blood in terms of what he's getting reportedly getting, I should say, in terms of new guaranteed money and the overall guaranteed money that he's getting in this 3-year extension. Great guy in the locker room, good guy to talk to, does his job well. Over the past 2 seasons, he's caught exactly 22 passes in each of the last 2 seasons. So it's a little rich for my blood in terms of what you're getting in terms of production, but at the same time, too, it's not like he's going to surpass T.J. Hawkinson in terms of tight end one, but great guy to have in the locker room, a solid NFL veteran. I like the move, a little rich for my blood, but I have no overall issue with keeping Josh Oliver here long-term in Minnesota.
Dan Miller, I don't know if you watched the BET Awards, but Za'Darius Smith was there and told USA Today that he wants to come back to Detroit. What do you think? Is this a possibility?
Yeah, I think it is. I felt like it was ever since they let him go, and the fact that they haven't brought in another veteran at a defensive end position or an edge rusher kind of has had me thinking all along that maybe they're just waiting until the time is right to see whether or not Za'Darius is still a fit here. I don't know if they want to look at the guys that they have projected to play on that edge with Derek Barnes coming back, Josh Paschal being out there. They know what Za'Darius can do. He played some effective football for them last year. He did it for the most part without Aiden Hutchinson being in there. So the thought of those two finally actually playing together might be enticing to the Lions. Look, Za'Darius isn't what he was, but he's still a player that can get after the quarterback. And in particular, if you have, let's say, an Aleem McNeil when he gets back on the interior and you have Aiden Hutchinson on one side, not going to get much over there going up against Za'Darius Smith. So I still believe it's a possibility. I'm a little bit interested in the fact that it hasn't happened yet and wondering if they do want him back, what they're waiting for. So we'll have to wait and see. But I will say this. I feel like, and we were told that the two parties were staying in touch. And if Za'Darius is still saying that, that leads me to believe maybe they've been talking a little bit and he thinks that's a possibility. But I'm just reading the tea leaves here.
Well, I know he was with a rapper from Detroit at the BET Awards, so that's in the Lions' favor right now.
Well, he's been around. That's one thing I think that's intrigued people is he has been around Detroit. He hasn't gone anywhere.
All right, Lions will be without Amon-Ra St. Brown until training camp in July. Underwent knee surgery. Does this concern you at all? Especially with a new,
I mean, look,
especially with a new coordinator, Dan.
They're done. I mean, look, they're off until camp. With that Hall of Fame game now bringing them back in mid-July, Dan Campbell wanted to make sure his guys got the full 6 weeks off that they normally get, so they canceled their mandatory minicamp. Their camp last week was the last time that they're going to be together, their OTA workouts. So the veterans are gone. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's going to be ready to go. Assuming that knee is sound coming out of surgery, which I have no reason to believe that it's not. If you told me to put my money on anybody on the Detroit Lions to be ready to go as soon as possible, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. So with the team being out, Amon-Ra knows what this offense is, and John Morton's not going to put in massive changes from what it was here under Ben Johnson. They'll be ready to go, so that doesn't concern me at all.
All right, Bears wrapped up their mandatory minicamp last week. This week they're going through an OTA for mostly rookies, special teams players as well. Ben Johnson called it last week when he said, hey, quote, we're not ready for prime time yet. And I think that was loud and clear over the last 3 weeks, but that is to be expected as well. Now, here's the reality, guys. With a new coaching staff and new offensive scheme, Johnson and quarterback Caleb Williams in September and October, that's maybe when things are going to be really rocking and rolling for this team. Yeah, it might take a couple of months into the regular season. This year's Bears could look a lot like, in my opinion, the 2022 Detroit Lions in Ben Johnson's first year as an offensive coordinator that season. What was their record, Dan Miller, before they finished up the year winning 8 of their last 10?
1-6.
That's right.
And it was not pretty. But you know what they were doing? They were scoring points during that 1-6 start, but they weren't stopping anybody, and they were turning the ball over. They stopped the turnovers. They started stopping people. They won 8 out of 10 and took it down to the very last game of the season before they were eliminated from the playoffs. But they enjoyed the fact that they eliminated the Packers on the final night of the season.
Of course they did. I like hearing that. By the way, the Bears, if they felt like they needed another running back, well, you can scratch Nick Chubb off that list. He signed with the Texans. Looking more and more like they're going to go with their 7th-round rookie, Kyle Monangai. They'll at least give him a great shot during training camp, the one-on-one practices with Miami and Buffalo they've scheduled as well, and the preseason game with the Chiefs. All right, Vikings-Packers all have their mandatory mini camps this week, as we just mentioned with Dan. It's all finished up in Detroit. I want to go around the horn real quickly, see what everyone is looking forward to. Lily, I'll start with you now with mandatory mini camp. What do you think?
Well, without Jaire Alexander, the interesting topic today, at least in the first day of mandatory camp, is the fact that Bo Melton, their receiver, is practicing with the cornerbacks. I think that shocked a lot of people today to see why is he out there with the defense. And, you know, he expressed interest. His brother Max, of course, a cornerback for the Cardinals, and so why not give it a try? And, you know, he was out there today. We'll see if this actually is a long-term thing, but he expressed his interest. Head coach Matt LaFleur just says he likes his production on the field. He likes what he does on special teams, but can it translate to playing defense? The interesting thing, though, is that he hasn't played defense since high school at Cedar Creek in New Jersey. So, again, we'll see if this is a long-term thing. We'll just see if it is just because a couple of those youngsters today at corner, they were not practicing, so maybe just filling a hole there. But that's an interesting topic. Elton Jenkins, of course, moving to center, their offensive lineman, their Pro Bowl offensive lineman. Will he get a deal done? And if so, when will he return to practice? That's something else to look forward to as well.
Pierre, what do you have for me? Give me 30 seconds of the Vikings this week.
Yeah, I was out there today, Lou. The most intriguing part from what I saw so far, it's a great sign to see Christian Darrisaw back on the field. He had a big brace on his left knee, but he had his helmet on, going through the individual drills and the drills with the offensive line. Remember, he tore his ACL in last year's game in Los Angeles against the Rams on a Thursday night. We haven't seen him since, but we're not sure how much we'll see of him in training camp. We don't know if he'll be ready for the start of the regular season. I'm still a little pessimistic about it, but today was a great sign for Christian Darrisaw, seeing him out there doing the drills with the guys and going through the motions with his offensive line and teammates.
J.J. McCarthy look good?
Was picked off today in 7-on-7 drills from Byron Murphy. He had a fumble exchange on the snap as well with his new center Ryan Kelly. So a little bit of a bumpy ride today for J.J. McCarthy. Overall pretty good, but those two things did occur today. All
right, we need to take a timeout. Aaron Rodgers, finally a Pittsburgh Steeler, and he is set to play all NFC North teams this season. And which quarterback in the division do you think is under the most pressure this year? We're going to discuss when we come back here on First and North.
Major League Baseball on Fox.
What I'm doing, getting right to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Oh
my goodness! Major League Baseball all season long on Fox.
Welcome back here to First and North. Lou Canellis with you at our Fox 32 studios in Chicago. Dan Miller, voice of the Lions, is in Detroit at Fox. Lily Zhao, Fox Milwaukee. Pierre Nugent, Fox Minneapolis. Worst kept secret is out. Aaron Rodgers finally signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. One-year deal. He was at mandatory minicamp earlier today, set to play against the entire NFC North coming up. Bears fans, we are ready for Rodgers. Week 12, November 23rd at Soldier Field. Lily, I'm anxious to talk about the return against the Packers. Packers fans, I'm sure they've had Week 8 on that Sunday Night Football schedule circled for a while, right?
Absolutely. Even before it was announced that Rodgers was going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, I think a lot of people were anticipating that could potentially be his destination. And so I'm hoping a lot of Packers fans have their tickets and they're going to be in the Steel City for that game. Prime time, Sunday Night Football, Week 8, Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers. Couldn't have asked for a better storyline outside of it being, of course, played in Green Bay. But alas, it's going to be a phenomenal game. And of course, Rodgers has a chance to kind of make history, be one of only 5 quarterbacks in the NFL to beat all 32 teams. He joined his predecessor, Brett Favre, in that achievement if he were to beat the Packers. But Green Bay kind of hoping it's the opposite. But it'll be just kind of surreal knowing that Rodgers beat the Steelers to win his only Super Bowl, and now he's playing for them and playing against his former team in the Packers. And so that's going to be a really, really fun build up to the week. And of course, the game is going to be exciting. But I think Packers fans are still kind of rooting for the fact that the green and gold will prevail.
But what do they think? I mean, you look at Rodgers' numbers last year. Let me jump to Dan for a second. Dan, you saw what Rodgers did last year. His numbers the last 10 games weren't all that bad. Over 2,200 yards, 18 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, decent passer rating. How do you think he'll play this year?
I mean, I think he ended up at, 28-11 on the year. I think he was in a dysfunctional organization where I don't think anybody really knew what was going on there. You had a coaching change there, which never helps. I have said on this show, every time we've talked about it, the best place for Aaron Rodgers is the Pittsburgh Steelers because I believe their culture is stronger than anything Rodgers can bring off the field, and now he can just concentrate with what he does on the field. Mike Tomlin, again, very strong figure as a head coach, well established. They don't do losing seasons in Pittsburgh, so I think they'll look to him as a guy that can help them keep that going. I think if he has anything left, and getting DK Metcalf certainly helps, if he has anything left, this is where we can find out because, again, I'm a big fan of that organization, the way they do their business, and they will expect Aaron Rodgers to adapt to the Steelers, not the Steelers to adapt to Aaron Rodgers, and I think that's an important part of the equation.
I agree with you, Dan. I think he's going to play well in Pittsburgh. Pierre, Vikings put pressure on Rodgers last season when the two teams played in London, and now they'll play in Dublin, right?
Yeah, that's right. We'll see Aaron Rodgers not in Minnesota for the second year in a row. It's out in Europe, and whether it's London or Dublin, last year they didn't make him look all that good in London, so they're hoping to have similar success in Dublin this year. Never been to Dublin before. Maybe I'll try to stow away on the Vikings plane, get a first-hand look at that, but let me run that by our general manager first. We'll see if they'll let me do that.
You know, it was crazy because everyone was beating him up about taking so long to sign, and then I looked back at some history. Boy, Aaron Rodgers signed with the Vikings August 12th when he went from the Jets to the Vikings. So I'll tell you what, Rodgers wasn't doing anything that was abnormal. Jordan Love and Rodgers already talking about swapping jerseys. Is that what I saw, Lily?
Yeah, and that would be something fun to see too, right? Of course, these guys, have a lot of respect for one another. Jordan Love was asked just recently just about his relationship with Aaron and just the fact he was very gracious about how he handled things in the transition and of course, just being a mentor for him in his 3 seasons in Green Bay with Rodgers. And so that'll be kind of a night where we're going to see the jersey swap, just a lot of other things going on the field. I'm kind of interested to see just what happens pregame with Rodgers when he's out in the field with a couple, Packers and seeing how that interaction goes, him and Matt LaFleur. And this reception that fans will give him when he does take the field. So it's going to be kind of interesting all around to see just what the reception will be like and, of course, just the welcome that he'll get because I think, at the end of the day, whenever his career is done, he will be welcomed back in Green Bay and, of course, the Hall of Fame as well.
All right, let's bring it back to Chicago for a second. Bears, of course, feel like they've won the offseason again, generated a lot of positive buzz out there. Listen to ESPN's Adam Schefter, who sounds like he's on board.
And every single thing the Bears have done this offseason seems designed to bring the best out of Caleb Williams. They hire Ben Johnson first and foremost and surround him with an assistant coaching staff to elevate Caleb Williams. They then go out and trade for 3 different offensive linemen to go fortify a leaky offensive front. So he's got the coaches. He's got the line. He's got the weapons. They are doing everything they can to make sure that he fulfills his potential.
They really are any better. You hear that from Schefter, and then there's another report from ESPN saying that the Vikings are eyeing a 3-year window to win a Super Bowl with J.J. McCarthy under center. They've yet to win a playoff game under Kevin O'Connell, if I'm not mistaken. Jordan Love last week said the Packers have Super Bowl aspirations. Lions knocking on the door for the Lombardi Trophy. So with all that being said, here's my question for the three of you today. Which NFC North quarterback is under the most pressure this season? Pierre, I'll start with you.
Well, certainly J.J. McCarthy is under a certain amount of pressure because he's an unproven commodity in this league, hasn't played a down of pro football outside of the preseason, what we saw last year, and he has to fill the shoes of Sam Darnold, who had a Pro Bowl season in Minnesota. This team won 14 games last year. That's a high bar to set for a new quarterback coming into this system, but with Kevin O'Connell at the helm, I think J.J. McCarthy is going to be just fine. So I don't know if I'd say he's under a lot of pressure, but there is a certain level of pressure that is going to be placed upon him to maintain the success that Sam Darnold and last year's Vikings team had, because 14 wins is certainly a high bar to set. They want to try to match that again with J.J. McCarthy.
All right, Dan, let me bring you in because I think Jared Goff is number one on this list. I think he's under the most pressure. I'll tell you why in a second, but you tell me what you think.
Yeah, I mean, this is my favorite kind of question that I used to get in school. There's no wrong answer here, guys. You can go with any of these quarterbacks. J.J. McCarthy, as Pierre just alluded to, is taking over a 14-win team that expects to continue to win. Love is trying to prove he deserved that contract and try to prove that he can take a team to the next level in the NFL. Goff is in a Super Bowl window. Look, there's a lot of pressure on these Detroit Lions to get it done because these windows don't last forever. They don't like to talk about windows, but they do exist. And Caleb Williams, look, you were the number one overall pick. Adam Schefter just said it. They have set the table for you to be successful. And if you're not successful, guess who's going to get most of the blame? Caleb Williams. So I don't know if there's one quarterback in this division. I think it's the best division in football. I think it's going to be terrific. And I think all these quarterbacks are facing pressure, albeit for different reasons.
Dan, here's why I think Goff is under the most pressure. He has to prove, number one, his success is about his progress as a quarterback in the NFL, not all about Ben Johnson and as his offensive coordinator. Number two, Jordan Love, third year Green Bay starting quarterback, led the Packers to the playoffs his first two seasons. Hey, the Packers are better on the offensive line and at wide receiver, and the guy's got a big $220 million deal, so he has contract security, and he's openly talked about taking the Packers to the Super Bowl. Number three, Caleb Williams, you touched on it, Dan. Guy was the first pick in the draft, supposed to be a generational talent, interior of his offensive line rebuilt, plenty of playmakers, arguably one of the top five offensive minds in the game, Ben Johnson. So let's see what he has. And J.J. McCarthy, he's the one guy, because he's in his first year as a starter, I think that maybe people are going to give him a break. Lily, what do you think?
Yeah, there's pressure on all four quarterbacks, but I'm going to go with Caleb Williams. I just think, in his rookie season, everything was analyzed, every throw was analyzed, every expression on the field was analyzed. If he did this, he didn't do that, he should have done this, should have done that. So I think, with the new head coach, just what will he do? Of course, the expectations are really high for Caleb Williams to perform in Chicago and, of course, be that generational talent, Lou, like you mentioned. And so can he live up to the expectation with the new head coach and be a better quarterback this season? I think a lot of pressure is on him to perform. And if they don't, I know Bears fans will let him hear it, but I think a lot of eyeballs remain on Caleb Williams, and rightfully so. I think the pressure this season, it will be high on him. Yeah, Bears fans will let him hear it, that's for sure. All right, one final timeout. We all know Ben Johnson loves his trick plays. Will he have more options this year with the Bears? We'll show you when we come back here on First and North.
The UFL is history in motion, built one story at a time. It's the gunslingers, the burners, and the cold-blooded.
A score is born.
It's a dynasty that went back to back to back. This is the UFL. The stories continue.
Welcome back. Dan Miller, you saw your fair share of trick plays from Ben Johnson. How about this last week at Bears camp? He's using offensive linemen to catch footballs. Last day of mandatory mini camp, and Bears had some fun. Linemen running routes. I'll tell you what, Darnell Wright had a great snag out there. You saw Penei Sewell. He had a design play against the Bears. Dan Skipper, what do you think? What are the Bears going to end up with from Ben Johnson this year?
You're going to see everybody have a chance to do it, but here's the thing you have to watch. You need ball security. The Lions were really good on those plays, and when you're flipping it back and forth sometimes to guys who aren't used to handling it, it can get dicey, so keep your eye on it.
All right, we will. Guys, have a great week. Lily, Dan, Pierre, we'll talk to you next week. I'm Lou Canellis. Thanks for watching another edition of First and North.